Good morning, afternoon or evening, ladies and gentlemen, Allincrypto here, and welcome back, guys, on this smashing Sunday for what is going to be nothing short of another jam-packed daily market update. And my apologies for not releasing a video yesterday. We were pretty occupied with some personal things that we had to take care of. However, we are back, hopefully with a bang today. And on Friday, the cryptocurrency markets got hit once again. It's really just a normal kind of price movement that we see within the cryptocurrency space. I think that was largely on the back end of what is currently going on in the Middle East. There seems to be a kind of theme in regards to Fridays and that region. And crypto very much being one of the only markets that's open after a certain time on Friday, bearing the brunt of it. So I think that's very much just the case in regards to what took place on Friday. It's very explainable. Crypto being the kind of most liquid open market, you know, it's going to react. It's going to be a lot more hypersensitive to sort of events that are taking place around the world. But we have continued to state, and we looked at the likes of the S&P, Nvidia, MicroStrategy, and many stocks out there that when the last sort of Iran-Israel news took place, we said we don't think there's going to be escalation because the markets are going higher. Actually, we've got higher targets now for many larger cap stocks out there. I don't want to go into them in too much detail in this video. However, we are going to be starting the video off by talking about one of the largest companies in the world and them potentially now buying Bitcoin. And of course, I'm talking about Microsoft. Now, this seems rather surreal. However, remember that this is in the context of the largest asset manager in the world, also the largest holder of Microsoft stock. We'll talk about MicroStrategy a little bit later on because it's relevant to this in regards to technology companies holding Bitcoin. And actually, MicroStrategy has been the best performing stock within the S&P 500 just for holding Bitcoin, essentially being a Bitcoin sort of holding vehicle. But Microsoft are potentially looking to buy or invest in Bitcoin. This is very interesting to me for a number of reasons. One, I think it's a narrative. And if Microsoft do this, you'll see a wave of others doing the same thing. And we already know there's a wave of others doing the same thing. Even in regards to not just companies, but organizations. There was some news that Emory University now reports owning $15 million worth of Grayscale's Bitcoin mini trust. So this is, as far as this individual knows, the first US university to report owning Bitcoin. And as more and more, and that's the SEC filing down there, as more and more companies, institutions accumulate Bitcoin, the interesting thing for me is, as somebody who's very zealous on Bitcoin miners, we have one Bitcoin miner in the Patreon. We've got a number of targets. One of them sees it do, from where it currently is, about a 25, 26x. There is a broader one that will potentially get towards that 90x. We're speculation at the moment. We'll see if it can make the first target and then get further on. So do become a Patreon, do get on board with that. But as more and more companies, as more and more universities, government agencies, governments accumulate Bitcoin, the mining of it and the maintenance of that and the kind of protection of the network becomes more and more a national security issue, and there might be this kind of arms race in regards to mining Bitcoin that takes place. And I think that's a really interesting narrative. But to stick to the topic at hand, and a narrative you can make money off, more importantly, as us here, as we're investors here. But to sort of stick to the topic at hand, this is legit. So Microsoft are now asking shareholders to vote on whether to consider investing in Bitcoin. Now, BlackRock, of course, is Microsoft's second largest shareholder, along with and many of the other people that offer Bitcoin ETFs are also the largest stockholders of or shareholders of Microsoft. The same people that made the ETFs happen. This is interesting. This doesn't mean that means they're going to put it through. Remember, BlackRock is essentially a hedge fund. They hold other people's money, and they'll have a vote on it there'll be an independent vote by each shareholder. But there's certainly, because BlackRock have came out, I mean, they literally did a report, or they did a report how it's a unique diversifier. They also did a presentation where they literally put a picture of their currency, the dollar, declining over time against Bitcoin. So it's really not out of the realms of possibility that one of the largest companies in the world, Microsoft, which has been a brilliant we've got loads of higher targets for Microsoft, by the way. It's been a great performer for us in regards to using technical analysis to predict. I think this is going to happen. And there's been some really interesting things on the back end of this. This is Microsoft's CTO, Kevin Scott. I don't know why I hadn't thought of it before, but Bitcoin is an incredibly powerful concept, and I don't think we fully grasped what it could mean for society. CEO of Blockstream, Adam Back, somebody who's in the running for Satoshi. I think he's a very unlikely candidate. And Samson Mow from Excellium met with Microsoft's CEO, Satya Nadella. I deliberately tried to say that name because I'm sure that might give some a laugh. No, the 10th of December is the vote to buy Bitcoin. And actually, it kind of makes sense. Michael Saylor's MicroStrategy is the best performing asset in the S&P 500, better than Microsoft. Microsoft, if they wanted to, could become a larger MicroStrategy. And you've got to think, what are the repercussions? Let's go over to the Microsoft chart. This has been great. This has been such a good chart for us. If you guys have been following me for any length of time, you'll know just how accurate we've got this. You're doing just the exact same thing here as the SPY. This is Bitcoin, where Bitcoin's kind of at. We'll talk about Bitcoin in just a second. I think people are just fatigued with crypto right now. I think this is just going to squeeze and set up some sort of continuation. Ugly, very low. But again, we saw this with the S&P. Everybody talking about Tesla now, aren't they? We've been looking at this for a while. People have been sort of fighting us the whole way. This has got that 505 and then a potentially $1,000 or $900 target. We're not that interested. We'd rather be in crypto, certainly the miners that we look at. But Microsoft getting involved in Bitcoin, and why wouldn't they when MicroStrategy, is it in my watch list of this? Meetings. It's just been such an amazing start. This is on its way to our sort of target that we set back in the sort of 150 zone. We said it was going to double, and it's very much on its way there. So this is huge. This is really big news that I haven't seen people largely pick up on. And you've got to think, the interesting thing for me, even though I'm not an investor in Microsoft, because I think we've got other assets that are going to perform better, like Bitcoin miners, if all these companies, if all these institutions, if the American people are all invested and its largest companies are invested in Bitcoin, there becomes a need to defend it and to maintain dominance in it. And there's a great value proposition there in regards to miners, I believe. And this is very interesting for me. Miners will outperform Bitcoin, in my opinion. The right ones, don't get me wrong, some of them, it's a little bit more risk you're taking on there rather than investing in the actual thing. But this is very interesting. I wanted to spend a little bit of time on this because this is something that I largely haven't seen people talking about, but this is massive news, guys, in regards to Microsoft potentially buying Bitcoin. And why wouldn't they? Even a small amount, Let's move on to some other pressing matters. US prosecutors are investigating Tether US Treasury weighs potential sanctions. Tether's going down, I'm afraid, guys, and I believe not going down as in FTX style going down. I don't believe that for 1 second. But we actually have and can see Tether, which currently sits at a 5% dominance of the overall cryptocurrency market, coming down to just above 1% of the overall market. Won't be long before this plays out, in my opinion. And I think that's going to come on the back end of regulations that are going to penalize them in favor of US companies. Tether is not a US company. It's the largest issuer of a US stablecoin, and it's not under their sort of jurisdiction. Stablecoins are going to play a vital role. They are CBDCs as far as I'm concerned in America. On the back end of this is some reporting from Smoke. Circle surpasses Tether in stablecoin transaction race. Tether, in my opinion, people think Tether's going to be a black swan. I don't believe so. I think it's going to be a lot more orderly in regards to what we're about to see for Tether. I think basically they're just going to get kind of BUSD'd out of, and that whole thing was nonsense with BUSD, wasn't it? You know, they destroyed that business only to then say, oh, okay, we're dropping the charges on Paxos. Hello. I mean, Binance is a whole case study on its own in regards to the US being a bully. Certainly the regulators. But I do believe we are going to see the falling out of Tether. I think this is going to see the rise of Ripple's RUSD, real USD, or real USD. And ultimately, we're very bullish on XRP. You know, I do think it's going to be a staple part of the sort of new financial system, which is going to basically see value be able to be transacted in the same way that we do things on the internet. Very interesting concept, but again, some pressing sort of news and matter. Let's talk a little bit about Bitcoin. Hang in there, guys. I know for the altcoin market, it's a pretty rough ride. I did a few weeks back, or about a week and a half ago, a meeting with Patreons where we looked at, people talk about global liquidity, and how people weigh global liquidity is often done by different formulas. You know, some people say global monetary supply is global liquidity. Some people will use global liquidity index, which is more sort of central bank balance sheet based as the kind of pumpers of liquidity. And when you look at global M2, somewhere like the US, Europe, and UK aren't at all-time highs, but somewhere like China and Japan are. And that would maybe explain why larger caps have done better. Because internally, the smaller caps within jurisdictions that are not such a global investment vehicle, they're waiting for that sort of rise in more sort of global liquidity index, central bank, internal balance sheets going up. And Bitcoin, I would say, fits in the narrative with the it's very much moved with the S&P 500. So on and so forth. I know people say that it doesn't, and there are, of course, going to be areas where it doesn't, but generally, you know, let's not beat around the bush. I think it does. Generally, on a general term, there's certainly been a bit of a discrepancy here, and we are looking for Bitcoin sort of SPY to maybe sort of turn around here. And what we looked at the start could be the narrative. So huge news. Hang in there, guys, in regards to the price action. Huge news on the back end or in regards to Microsoft. And why wouldn't they buy Bitcoin? Even a little bit. And certainly they're putting this down to the shareholders. I think you're going to get a demand. Certainly with the likes of BlackRock being the second largest and the way that they're very much pushing and promoting Bitcoin at the moment. And if you look at how well MicroStrategy's performed, you know, it seems like a bit of a no-brainer. We also know that there's been banking regulations in the form of SARB 121 that have been changed, or 212, whatever it is. The question I have to ask is, where's the opportunity here? And I think the opportunity for me is with miners, because if you get all of these companies that are now going to essentially hold Bitcoin, and we looked at a university there, and institutions and everyday people and hedge funds and banks and et cetera, government agencies, then there's a great need to maintain dominance in it. And I think that's going to come in the form of not nationalizing potentially miners, but certainly some mirroring of that, just like we see the US sort of nationalizing and prioritizing tech companies to sort of maintain their dominance globally. So that's it from me, ladies and gentlemen. Huge news in regards to Microsoft. We could really see this be a massive narrative and a kind of domino that leads to more dominoes falling, and ultimately sees Bitcoin go towards those higher price predictions that we have. Technically, there's going to be a narrative, of course, that a narrative that, of course, accompanies it. I do believe we are going to see the fall of Tether in regards to dominance, but not in a Black Swan-esque style. And I think this is going to clear the path for the likes of Real USD and some of the others out there. In regards to the price action, guys, hang in there. It's boring, it's lackluster, but I do think your patience will be rewarded. Remember, the markets, Warren Buffett's great saying is, the markets are very good at taking from the impatient and giving to the patient. And I think a large part of the cryptocurrency space or demographic in regards to investors, great immaturity there. Oftentimes, this is the first asset they've ever invested in, which is great. But there's a whole kind of learning experience that many of you are now sort of embarking on. So that's it from me, ladies and gents. I'm going to love and leave you on that note. Have a smashing Sunday, and I'll see you all in the next one. Thanks for watching, guys. See you in the next.